So I love creating new things, whether it's a business, whether it's a blog article, these videos, I love creating. But when it comes to actually creating idea, that wasn't the problem for me. It was that I never really followed through. So I was really lacking in this area. I had a ton of ideas. That wasn't my problem. But I didn't have any creations to show for it. So it wasn't until I started working with my marketing coach that I realized that I was really quite scared to create. And instead of acknowledging any of my fears, I was just making up a ton of excuses to go for it, right? To go with it, right? Like, I don't have enough time. I'm not a writer. I'm not creative. You know how the excuses go, right? Um, do you think any of these excuses were legitimate? Certainly not. And it was just my own fears that was stopping me from creating anything. So I wanted to share a little bit about my experience. So if you're going through the same thing, it will help you to learn from my own experiences. So here's what I found why I wasn't creating. Fear of rejection. I feared rejection. I found that it was really scary for me to present my ideas to audience and have the ability for them to criticize me. The idea that they could reject me and my idea was pretty frightening, and it still is really frightening for me. Fear of showing myself to others. So the content that I produced was 100% me. And by sharing it meant that I was sharing a raw part of me that no one really knew about. And I just didn't know how they would judge it. And I was pretty scared that they wouldn't love it. I was too hung up on the logistics. I was constantly focused on what vehicle that I was going to use to share my message, right? I was tied up in the question, was it video? Should it be blog? Should it be graphic? Etc., etc. And I lost sight that it wasn't really so much the message. It wasn't really so much the vehicle that was important, but it was that I had this message to share. So the vehicle was just a way of me sharing it, and it was not as important as getting my message out there, right? The next one, this one is my favorite. I was just trying so damn hard to be so perfect. I wanted everything to be so perfect from the start, right? I'm reading this book by Elizabeth Gilbert, the author of Eat, Pray, Love, and it's called Big Magic. And she talks about how women, we face perfectionism a lot more than men, and how we'll go for a job interview. And a woman, if we have like 99.8% of the skills, we still won't take the job because we're not perfect and we don't have the extra skill set what the job requires. Which on the contrast with men, all they need is, 40% of the skills, and they'll go out and they'll go for it. So I feel that I face perfectionism a lot. And what I realized, and I didn't realize in that moment, is to get better at what you do, you're going to have to practice at it. And still, nothing is ever going to be perfect. This video post is certainly not perfect. And while I've tried really hard to put all that I can into creating it, I've still acknowledged that people will still tell me out there that there's something wrong with it. So now that I know about all these fears that I'm facing, right? How do I overcome it? Because in order to get our message shared, we're going to have to create things. So the first thing I did was I went out and I did something that was uncomfortable for me. This helped me to get over my fear of rejection. And like they say, get out of your comfort zone, right? For me, I've always been fearful of talking to strangers on the street, in fear of this idea that I would be rejected by them. So what did I do? I went out there and I got over this fear of rejection. Next, I acknowledged that fear is showing up for me. So when I felt that fear is starting to arise, the first thing that I do is acknowledge that it's there. This is a way different conception that we're taught these days, but trust me, it works. When fear pays a visit to me, I say straight on to fear. I say in my head, hey, how's it going, fear? I could acknowledge that you're here, but you're no longer going to be the dictator to my decisions. And then what do I do next? I go and do what is feared. The next thing that I do is I take the first vehicle of creation that has showed up for me. So I stopped thinking about what vehicle that I started to use, and I started to think of my message. And I took the first thing that I felt inclined to do, and I went with it, right? I figured that I could always pivot from whatever it is that I decided to choose. In my own experience, I saw that I was journaling a whole ton, right? And so I figured, why not start writing? I also like to look at it too, like try new vehicles, right? Because there's always an opportunity to learn about different platforms and then see what resonates with you. The next thing that I did was I looked at perfection as if it was a tool for making my work of art better. This is something that my beautiful marketing coach taught me, and it's something that I'll take with me. So I was frustrated about this idea of perfection and how it was stopping me from getting my work out there. And I told my marketing coach about my frustrations, and what she said to me was this: thank perfection for being a way of making your work of art better. Because without this perfectionist attitude, you wouldn't keep improving. So I've taken this, and this has really helped me to get over this idea of being perfect, right? And using it to actually fuel me and keep me improving. This is also important to note that I no longer use this perfection attitude from stopping me from doing anything from stopping me from sharing. So when I feel that something is really good and I put the best that I've made into it, then I know that it's time to share. Because like I said, I acknowledge now that nothing will ever be perfect. The last thing, and this is the most important, is I told myself that my message deserved to be shared. I really do believe that we all have a unique, special gift to share with this world, and it needs to be shown to the world. Someone once told me, you're being so damn selfish by not sharing your message when there's probably so many people out there that you could help. So each time I get fearful to share my message, I really tell myself that it's not fair to not go out and share it, because there are so many people that can benefit from it being shared. So this has been my experience with going out and creating things and getting over my own fears. So I hope this helps you to tackle your own creative fears. And write down below and tell me what it is that you're fearing to do, and tell me if any of this resonated with you. Cheers!